you and I thank you for being online watching this communication. First of all, allow me to remind you that I was supposed to communicate to you on Friday. However, like I updated you, on Friday, our network was deliberately slowed down and then finally switched off. Not only the internet network, but also power was switched off. Therefore, I was not able to communicate to you from Magere. And indeed, when I updated you, I've been seeing many of your comments advising me not to speak to you from my Magere home because the same thing would happen. And therefore, I heeded to your advice, and today I'm not streaming live from Magere. We decided to move this communication to today, Sunday, for various reasons. But most importantly, because we knew that Museveni is going to speak today. And because he's going to speak today, chances are fewer that the internet will be switched off because he also wants to communicate to the people of Uganda. Imagine where we are, ladies and gentlemen, where we can only time our communication, where we can only speak when Museveni wants people to listen. And therefore, I'm glad to be talking to you today, regardless. Today, I want to talk to you about three things. One, I want to appreciate all of you for the work and all the various things that you've been doing in support of the struggle. I also want to update you on the state of affairs in our country and the state of our struggle. And finally, I want to suggest a way forward. I am glad that I'm able to come to you straight without any glitches. As on Friday, many of you know that along the campaign trail, network jammers were always stationed where we were to make sure we don't stream live to you. And in the same way, network jammers were driven. There's a truck that jams the network that was driven and parked at my Magere home. I'm even informed a few minutes ago that the network around Magere was once again slowed down. I'm glad that we thought before time, and now we are able to talk to you. I want to thank you, fellow Ugandans, very, very much for the support. Thank you very much. Mwebale nyo, mwebale ddala bannange, eyalama noi, mwebale ino, mwebale irala, mwanyala nabi. Thank you very much for the support that you've given to us before, during, and after the elections. Ladies and gentlemen, it is you, fellow Ugandans here in Uganda and in the diaspora, that footed the bills of our posters, that bought the fuel, that fed us, that treated us, that did everything. Even if General Museveni likes to always claim that we are funded by foreigners, but we are funded and supported by you, the common Ugandans, here in Uganda and abroad. I cannot take you for granted. I want you to know that you are the wind beneath our wings. Thank you very much for turning up to vote. Thank you very much for giving me your trust, for voting me, electing me as your president, because I know you voted for me to be your president. And I know that we won. We won according to the declaration forms that we were able to collect, up to 25,000 declaration forms, and those that we could not access, including the ones that were, confiscated from us and from our agents by soldiers and the police. Where we didn't get declaration forms, we relied on those that came from the Electoral Commission, even when we don't trust them. So according to our tally, our finding is that we won with 54.19%. In the face of all the rigging, we are aware, as you watched the military, police officers critiquing all available ballot papers in favor of General Museveni. I already updated you, ladies and gentlemen, that military trucks were moving from one polling station to another, especially in the districts of Western Uganda and Northern Uganda, taking all available ballot papers in favor of General Museveni. Many places were not able to vote in Northern and Western Uganda. At many polling stations, the voters reached, but were told that the election was not taking place. Some were told that they could only vote for their members of parliament and go back home. They could not vote for the president. So in the face of all those irregularities, I am proud that you Ugandans asserted your voices very solidly. And therefore, I am confident to inform you, ladies and gentlemen, that we won this election. Of course, as you know, General Museveni, using the military, police, and all other institutions of state, rigged this election, albeit brainlessly, but they rigged it. We are all aware that the Electoral Commission announced the results before even actually counting. That explains why they every now and then put up contradicting declaration forms, trying to justify their rigging. So I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for turning up and voting, and most importantly, voting for change. I want to thank you for supporting us during the election, but most importantly, supporting us after that election. You are all aware that General Museveni arresting our people, torturing them so bad. Many have shown up dead, while others are still in hospital, nursing wounds of torture. You, ladies and gentlemen, especially you friends in the diaspora, the US chapter, the European chapter, the friends of Uganda across the world, you have supported us. You have treated the victims of torture. You have treated those that are with grave injuries. And indeed, those that have died, you've supported us. For example, just the day before yesterday, we were laying our comrade Fabian in Arua. You supported the funeral. You supported the transportation of the body. We salute you, ladies and gentlemen. We continue to be motivated by your kindness. And we can only say we won't give up simply because we know that you are there. We also thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for supporting those comrades that are in incarceration. You've constantly supported those in Chitalia, those in different prisons across the country, with meals, with bail money, with legal assistance, and all the assistance that you've extended to their families, the welfare of their families. Hundreds of our comrades are in prison, but their families don't lack. Not because of we, the leaders, but because of you, Ugandans, that dig deep in your pockets to ensure that these comrades are constantly reminded that they are not alone. Thank you very much. I cannot thank you enough, ladies and gentlemen, but I'll only say that God should bless you abundantly, and we can only pledge not to give up. I want to update you about the state of affairs in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, after the election, knowing the kind of crime that he had committed, knowing the kind of fraud that they just gotten involved in, General Museveni and Sonia Azifola Busungu, he started rounding up all our people. Abductions increased. Many people have been abducted. Some have shown up dead, like in Mukono and in northern Uganda, while others have shown up with grave injuries. A young man called Segawa Ronald, who many of you saw in a video, who was paid to paint himself yellow and move on skates to pretend he supported Museveni. As you know, Museveni has always been renting support. This young man was captured on camera telling the people of Uganda that he is there to make money, but his heart was for change. Segawa was abducted, beaten so bad. 3 of his fingers were cut off. His teeth were removed. He was tortured and dumped for dead. Good Samaritans picked him up, took him to hospital. Like many others, he is still recovering, but he is strong. Not only that, I can only give you a few examples, ladies and gentlemen, but the abductions have increased. More than 600 people have gone missing. Just today, a young man from Nachifuma, famously known as Jimani, was abducted. Nobody knows where he is. And a few of those that have showed up, you've seen they've come out bearing marks of torture. Many have been murdered, like I've said. The females that have been lucky to resurface, have reported being raped in detention by government security. Others have been tortured so bad that they even fear to speak. We have a newly elected mayor in Buwama. He has been missing for a month, but when he and his comrades showed up, they could not dare speak because their close associates tell us that they were gravely intimidated and promised to be murdered if they dared to speak out. However, it's at this note that I want to encourage all of you friends, speak out. Mwogere baba bakozeeko kubanga yeyo security yokajje muina. Speaking out is the only security that you have. I always told you on the campaign trail, and I tell you now, that the camera is our biggest weapon. Dictators fear being exposed. So don't be intimidated. They released you because they could not hold you any longer, because there's so much pressure. So while we exert the pressure, once you happen to get your freedom, speak out. Your speaking out is going to be life-saving for the many people that are in incarceration. Let these murderers know that they cannot go scot-free. Let these murderers know that everybody that comes out will expose them. That is the only way we can stop this crime. We have all seen General Museveni telling lies. He came out and confessed that SFC, his personal army, his personal guards, are the ones that are holding our people, even though he cut down the number to 53. But he came out and said SFC is the one holding our people. Interestingly, when the spokesperson of SFC came out to speak to the nation, he denied holding those citizens of Uganda. But again, in the same communication, the spokesperson of SFC said they don't have to follow any law when they are abducting and kidnapping these our fellow Ugandans. So you can imagine the impunity. President avayo nagamba aba SFC bebakwata bana abantu era bebabatulugunya. Aba SFC ne bavayo ne begaana, and then ne bamala ne bagamba tebalina goberera mateeka gonna nga bakwata abantu. So you can imagine the impunity that we are dealing with in Uganda today. Many attacks have continuously gone on. Just yesterday, our comrade Mobiru James was brutally arrested, and up to now, nobody knows where he is. That's where we are. And sadly, this is not only happening to those in the opposition, but even those that have supported the NRM for the longest time. I was watching TV, and I recall with misery a lady that has been a diehard of NRM and the Museveni supporter, crying, looking for her son. She cannot find her son because her son was abducted and he is missing, simply because the son is supporting change, because the son is supporting Chagulanyi. I have told you time and again, friends, that nobody is free. Where there's no rule of law, where there's impunity, nobody is safe, not even you that support General Museveni. For example, Mr. Tamari Mirundi is a renowned regime supporter, is a renowned Museveni supporter. Every time he shows up on TV or online, he is wearing yellow. He clearly supports Museveni regardless of the impunity that's ongoing. On Friday, the day I was supposed to communicate to you, I learned that his son, Tamale Mirundi Jr., was attacked and beaten very badly, losing teeth and having to go through an operation. I spoke to his mother and I spoke to his father just to communicate to them and express my concern with them. But this speaks to many of us. The only cases that we can update you about, the only cases that we can talk about are the popular cases, are the outstanding cases. But these are only an example of the grave, grave human rights abuses that are ongoing in Uganda today. Imagine if the military attacks and tortures and brutalizes children of renowned NRM supporters. What do you think happens to the rest of the country? What do you think happens to the little known young men and women in the ghetto? That is where we are. That is who Museveni really is. We sympathize with you, friends. Tubasasira, tuyimiridde namwe, naye era twagala mumanye mikwano gyaffe ti bye twogerako bituuka ku buli muntu. Injustice to one is injustice to all. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. Ekyo kinyigiriza abantu abamu directly, kinyigiriza n'abalala indirectly. Ensonga lwaki namwe bannaffe abagamba nti muwagira mwami Museveni tetumuwalana ng'omuntu naye tuwalana ebikolobero Museveni byakola. Museveni yavumiriranga Idi Amin, now is doing 10 times worse than Idi Amin. And that should speak to you. It should speak to all of us. We are fighting against injustice, against impunity, against lawlessness, against state-inspired violence, against human rights abuses. And nobody is safe until we are all safe. So it is sad, very sad to know. I mean, the other day I was in Chitalia visiting some of our comrades, but among them is a 21-year-old young man. His name is Mujuche, also known as Lukman. Lukman Kampala is our cameraman. He turned 21 years yesterday. But Lukman was arrested and now detained in Chitalia for simply associating with National Unity Platform, for simply being a member of People Power, for simply supporting Kyagulanyi and being a friend to Kyagulanyi. Lukman's father was among the soldiers that ushered in the NRM regime. Lukman fought to bring in, Lukman's father, fought to bring in Museveni into power. Tata wa Lukman, oboliawo yali asubira that the son will live in a better Uganda. These, our parents, struggled to make sure that children live in a better Uganda. But here we are watching Raphael Mwejuche, a son to an NRA Bushiro, who is now in Chitalia, simply because he is exercising his democratic right. That is very sad. Many young men and women have been arrested, rounded up. We have had numerous stories. When I was in Chitalia, I was informed that up to 90% of the inmates in Chitalia government prison are brought in for being associated with NUP. Some of them were arrested on taxi, parks. A taxi comes and the conductor is calling Kampala, Genderao, and they all get in. They drive up to CMI. Why? Because Museveni fears young people. Museveni knows that young people have been betrayed. He has, duped them, and he knows that they are not supporting him. And he fears them because he knows they will assert their right in one way or another. So he's rounding up Nalumanya, Nesalumanya. Many of them are charged for possession of military stores. Many of them have never seen a beret like the one, or never touched a beret like the one I'm wearing. But when they reach there, they are put in a room, made to wear a beret, a picture is taken, and they are detained in Chitalia. That is how sad it is, ladies and gentlemen. Many of our children, our little young brothers and sisters, who are supposed to be returning to school, are actually missing their senior 4 and senior 6 exams. Why? Because they are in prison. Why are they in prison? Simply because they want change, or simply because they are young people. And the old man that is ruling us on gunpoint is scared of young people. Many challenges, friends. We are aware that the economy is in shambles. We are aware of the rampant unemployment. So many businesses have crumbled. Many people have lost their jobs. Why? Because General Museveni wants to keep us in that position. Businesses have suffered, ladies and gentlemen. And yet, many parents, like me here, have to take back their children to school. But the same people that want to take back their children to school actually don't even have what to feed the children because of the conditions that have been created by General Museveni. COVID-19 itself is being used as a political tool, and as if that's not enough, General Museveni has imposed a political curfew. So many of our people survive on border business, but by 7, borders are not allowed to work. As a person that grew up in the ghetto, as a person that always worked at night, there's something called the night economy. the people that rule over us don't know that actually there are millions of people that survive on the night economy. Those who cook tea and food, those who work in entertainment places, those who work in taxi parks at night, those who work through the night, they cannot work anymore. These are people that are expected to survive. These are people that are supposed to pay school fees for children. But unfortunately, their lives were put to a halt. There's no justification. Museveni cannot explain the relationship between curfew and COVID-19, but they continue to impose a curfew on our people, even when it's not justified. Kinono kyabulabe nnyo mikwano gyange. Kyabulabe nnyo okulaba nti abatukulembera tebafaayo. Abannayuganda bangi nnyo ng'emirimu gyabwe gya kiro nga bo basurvivingira ku night economy, ng'omuntu akozeeko mu ndongo, ng'omuntu akozeeko mu bulamu bw'ekiro, mu taxi ez'ekiro, mu mikolo egy'ekiro. Tumanyi nti bangi abafumba kyayi ku zipaaka, abavuga zibooda ekiro, abavuga taxi ekiro, ng'omu agivuga misana omulala agivuga kiro, booda omu agivuga misana omulala agivuga kiro, n'ebirala ebifaanana bwe bityo. Obulamu bwabwe bwakoma. Lwaki? Kuba Museveni yateekawo kafyu. Tasobola kunnyonnyola nti kafyu egasa bweti mu kulwanyisa obulwadde. During the day, the towns are packed, but at night, simply because he wants to subjugate the people and keep them under stiff control, he has imposed that curfew, and every now and then when he's scared of what would happen, he tightens the curfew. We criticize that in the hardest terms possible. But again, criticizing it is not going to be enough, ladies and gentlemen. In our suggested way forward, maybe we'll suggest a few things, but like I constantly say, it's also upon you, the people of Uganda. It's not only upon the leaders. You are leaders too, so you can also devise solutions. Besides the night economy that has died, the health care sector, we borrowed loads of money to revamp our health care. We had expectations that maybe the COVID-19 pandemic might give us reason to refurbish our hospitals, to restock our hospitals, to have medicines in our hospitals. Alas, General Museveni used all the borrowed money to ensure that he uses it in campaigns, to ensure that he uses that money to, perpetuate himself in power. And for that reason, our health sector continues to sink. Our hospitals and health centers continue to be sick themselves. People suffering from COVID-19 are dying here in Uganda because of reasons like lack of oxygen. You can imagine, in a pandemic, in a health crisis, hospitals are doing worse than they were doing before, despite of the trillions borrowed. Insecurity. We are facing insecurity brought by security. What do I mean? It is the security agencies that are supposed to guarantee security. Very unfortunately, they are the ones that are increasing the insecurity. We are aware that police officers, LDUs, soldiers are the ones either robbing people or waylaying them and extorting money from them. Just a simple drive at 8 o'clock, you're going to find people rounded up. If you are able to bring 10,000 or 5,000, you will go home. If you're not, then you're going to go to prison. Very many people are in prisons having been arrested out of purportedly enforcing a curfew. So this is insecurity by security. We've seen looting by men and women in uniform, extortion by men and women in uniform. Very sad. Very many grave injustices that are ongoing. However, like we said when we were starting our campaign, that we have gone past the book of lamentations. We are heading to the book of actions. So because I don't intend to take so long communicating, ladies and gentlemen, it is necessary to remind us of the challenges that we are facing as a nation. But again, we want to remind you that we are the solutions, and therefore to point so much to the solutions, well knowing that the nation, the leadership that we have is not pro-people, but against the people. Corruption is one thing that we cannot fail to talk about. Recently, the Auditor General released a report showing that the government have actually failed to account for the billions and billions that were borrowed to fight COVID-19. Twewoze ebbiliyoni n'ebbiliyoni, government tesobola kulaga ngeri gye zaafulumiziddwa, nenga zaafulumiziddwa. And that is how it has been. Every day in the papers there's a story talking about corruption, talking about billions and billions that have been stolen. Unfortunately, these billions are stolen either by relatives of the president, or by cohorts of the president, or the inner circle of the president, or the untouchables of this country. And therefore, we can only talk about it and leave it there. And that's it, until we decide to paint a better way forward. Number 3, the way forward. What is the way forward? With all the challenges that we've mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, with all the injustices, with all the unbearable pains that we are facing, what is the way forward? First and foremost, we looked at changing leadership, and that is why we went into the election, which election was marred with brutality, with lawlessness, with murder. Hundreds of our people were killed, and looking at the 18th and 19th of November, over 100 shot dead. Nobody held accountable, only for General Museveni to come out chest thumping and congratulating his boys for a job well done. And the killing has continued. We won the election, but we were not announced winners. I was put under house arrest. We petitioned the Supreme Court. You all saw how the Chief Justice conducted himself and his remarks. And that's why I told you that we are bringing back the matter to the court of the people. So what is the way forward? Friends, in the 1980s, we all remember General Museveni saying, and I quote, "What else can one do when a government has closed all ways of peaceful change? What can we do other than resigning to slavery?" He said that before he and his friends took up arms, which led to the death of more than 500,000 people. That was in 1980. There's a book that I've been reading. This book is called Mission to Freedom, Uganda Resistance News. It was written between 1981 and 1985. This book was written by Museveni and his friends. I want to quote from this very book. I will read for you a little bit from page 3. It says, and I read, "The right of rebellion against tyranny has been recognized from the most ancient of times to the present day by men of all creeds, ideas, and doctrines. It is part and parcel of the notion of political liberty. It transcends any narrow laws enacted by petty dictators and despots." The right to rebellion transcends any laws enacted by petty dictators and despots, just like Museveni. He goes on to say, "The right to rebel against tyranny was at the very root of the American War of Independence against the British imperialism. It was at the root of the French Revolution against divine right and monarchical despotism. It was at the root of many successful anti-colonial wars in countries here in Africa and elsewhere. For example, Algeria, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Angola, and others. Even the normally imperturbable Britons found occasion to invoke this right on a number of occasions. Once at Rudumide, to force King John to sign the Magna Carta, and on other occasions to depose crowned kings like James II and Charles. This golden right was aptly defined by the American Declaration of Independence, signed on July 4th, 1776 in Philadelphia. Museveni goes on to say, he goes on to quote the Declaration of the American Declaration of Independence, and that was in 1776. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are the right to life, to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter, abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing